what's happening with Block Cop City?
So Block Cop City came out of some meetings that we had during the last week of action in June. It was a less eventful week of action than the one in March, and we saw certain tactics becoming exhausted, at least, for the present moment. We needed a way out of this, this sort of interesting conundrum, this interesting confluence of circumstances that we have right now, where on the one hand, more people than ever know about Cop City, more people than ever oppose Cop City. You saw, we just talked about how many people signed the petition to get the referendum on the ballot. On the other hand, the repression has been so bad and so absurdly outsized to what, even mainstream legal scholars find appropriate for this kind of activism. The repression has been so bad, so violent at times that people are afraid to show up and do any kind of embodied action. And, I get it. It's really scary. So we were trying to find a way out of this bind and make people feel like they could come and do direct action, like they could do embodied action again in Atlanta. And we wanted to create a really easy on-ramp for people who've maybe never even done something like this before. So what we came up with, what we've sort of converged upon, is a nonviolent act of civil disobedience, sort of in the mold of the anti-nuclear movement of the 60s and 70s that had a number of successful occupations of sites where they're trying to build environmentally hazardous nuclear plants. Certainly in the mold of the civil rights movement, which has a very deep legacy in Atlanta. So basically what's going to happen is people from all over the country are going to come to Atlanta the Veterans Day weekend, which we chose because it's a 3-day weekend. People have an extra day to travel, but it's not a religious holiday. Well, it might be for some, but not for most. And people don't really have to do much that weekend. They can just come on down to Atlanta. We're asking people to form affinity groups, which is just kind of a buddy system for travel, for decision making, for making sure that you're with people that you trust and you can help keep each other safe. Each affinity group is going to have one representative. So we're going to have some spokes councils. The way that works is someone from every affinity group can represent them in the big spokes council, but it's still sort of horizontal and federated and sort of an anarchistic model. So everyone coming to Atlanta will have some input on what the final plan is. But these organizers, which we're calling now the Coalition to Block Cop City, it's a bunch of organizers who've been involved since the beginning, some in Atlanta, some all over the country. We've been meeting every week. We have a number of different working groups for various different parts of it, national outreach, housing, strategy planning, et cetera, and this tour that I'm currently on. And we've been planning. And some of the details will be left up to the day because there's always going to be changing conditions on the ground, but some have been planned for quite some time. So the basics are we're going to meet up early in the morning away from the construction site. We're going to split into a few different marches, depending how many people are there. And we're going to enter the construction site from a few different places. Then we're going to occupy the construction site all day long. Now, this is not meant to establish a new encampment. As I've said, I think that strategy has been exhausted for a few different reasons at this point. But we're going to stay there all day. There's going to be a tree planting element because they've already cut down, unfortunately, a little bit of the forest. So we're going to plant some trees to establish some new growth there. There's going to be community events. There might be some music. And everyone's going to be trained in de-escalation tactics beforehand. So this is really important. We're going to have 2 full days of trainings for nonviolent direct action tactics. So people will know what to do in various scenarios, depending what the cops do. They'll be trained in de-escalation. They'll be trained in keeping each other safe. They'll be trained in standing together, because a lot of the time when the really bad stuff goes down with the cops, it happens because people, they scatter, they freak out and they scatter. Right. But if there's a large crowd, a large crew of people, like 1,000 people in broad daylight with kids, with clergy, with the media watching, the cops are a lot less likely to try anything. Also, I think the state might even be realizing right now that they have overplayed their hand. I should mention a different group of people, a different group of protesters who are also involved with the movement, the Faith Coalition Against Cop City. 5 people from this group did a similar type of action recently on the construction site, a People's Stop Work Order, if you will. And they got arrested, but they are all out on misdemeanor charges, which is generally the kind of charges that people get for protesting.
Generally,
like
yes.
This.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's nice to see that different corners of the movement, different people are sort of independently converging on this as the move right now. And I think it's going to help not just show how many people are opposed to Cop City, demonstrate our power, be a pain in their ass, and open up space for more actions, hopefully, because there's a lot of time still between November and March. But we also hope it puts the state in a bit of a bind in terms of the charges that have already been levied and in terms of the charges that they're thinking of levying in the future. Because if you have 1,000 people doing a nonviolent direct action in the mold of MLK in Atlanta, one of the birthplaces of civil rights, if you try to arrest 1,000 people and charge them with terrorism for doing that, it would be an international outrage and throw the state into political crisis. And I don't think they're going to do that. Obviously, it's possible. But if they say charge people less, if they charge people with misdemeanors for the exact same thing that people have already been charged with terrorism for doing, that would also serve to delegitimize those charges for the people already facing them and anybody facing them now. So yeah, that's the hope.
100%.
And that's the strategy.
Yeah, I mean, that's awesome to hear, and everyone can learn more about that element at blockcopcity.org. Again, just plugging that if you want to help out or if you want to join. The information is there. Jamie, before we let you go, how can people attend your speaking tour and listen to you? What do people need to know about that?
Okay, one more point. Is that allowed?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, of course.
I just want to emphasize, we are not doing this. We're not choosing a nonviolent direct action right now in order to make the distinction between good protesters and bad protesters, right? This is a narrative that the state is trying to set forth. We do not denounce any tactics in this fight. The movement's strength has been its diversity of tactics so far. We're doing it because it feels strategic in this moment. And that will feed into me answering your question.
Yeah, Jamie, sorry, but just to jump in there, I just want to say, RICO was instituted the year after Fred Hampton died, but these sorts of legal attacks on protesters, this is how the state works.
Yeah.
Right? This is how it knows how to deal with these sorts of movements that are getting in the way of its initiative. So yeah, I mean, I think all respect to everybody involved in these sorts of actions you're talking about, because this is the sort of thing that we're going to be reading about 50 years from now too.
Thank you so much, and I really hope so. Yeah, what you said just reminded me, actually, the date of the start of this conspiracy named in the RICO indictments was the date that George Floyd was murdered. Right. Now, the plans for Cop City had not yet been announced then, so they are connecting it very explicitly to the movement against police and prisons that we saw come to the forefront in 2020.
Right. A good point there in connecting those things. But so your speaking tour, Jamie. Yeah.
So this is very exciting right now. I mean, one reason why we chose this kind of act that can be openly planned and promoted is so that we can go and talk to the maximum number of people possible. I think, there have been efforts in the past to engage people in the movement, but I think it seemed a little scary at times, especially when, the mainstream media was trying to portray us as a bunch of, eco-terrorists or whatever. But now I'm able to go out. We're able to go out all over the country and talk to groups of people, some of whom have been involved in organizing before, some of whom are undergrads in college who maybe this is the first thing they've ever done. And we're giving people some history of the land they're trying to build Cop City on, some history of the movement and what's been done to oppose it. And then we're sort of outlining this new phase of the movement, this new direct action that we're planning. Then we're having little affinity group workshops where we have some breakout discussions, we have Q&As, and we invite everybody to, at the end of the meeting, give us your information, and we'll be in touch and help you with whatever you need to form an affinity group and come to Atlanta November 10th to 13th. So we're hitting, we're hitting 70 cities across the country, as well as one in Mexico and one in Canada. So it's a North American tour. And I'm doing the whole Northeast pretty much. Other people are doing other places. So yeah, it's been really exciting so far. And if you want to come out to an event, you can go to blockcopcity.org/tour. And that is a really good place to, meet your friendly representative from Block Cop City and get plugged in.
Well, love it, Jamie. So good to hear from you. And so, good to see you doing some of this work. We've had activists on here before, but makes total sense that you're involved. Really appreciate it. That we will be in touch.
Thanks, Jamie.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
For sure.